Hey, third graders, are you ready to go on an adventure today? Today we are going to go owling. What does owling mean? You'll find out while we read today's story. I am the metaphor mama, and we are going to be looking for metaphors and listening as we are reading today. And I got a little help from Simile Sarah, because there's some similes in our book today too. Don't forget, similes compare things using like or as, and a metaphor compares things but does not use like or as. So let's see what we find out. This book is called Owl Moon, and it is written by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John Schoner. And this book is really good. It has some great language. It's beautifully written. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Pa and I went owling. There was no wind. The trees stood still as giant statues, and the moon was so bright the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. So if you were listening, I heard two similes on that page using like or as. We had the trees stood as still as giant statues, and the train whistle is being compared, the sound of it, to a sad, sad song. Okay? I could hear it through the woolen cap Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered the train, and then a second dog joined in. They sang out, trains and dogs, for a real long time. And when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on towards the woods, Pa and I. So they're saying it's as quiet as a dream. A simile. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Pa made a long shadow, but mine was short and round. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round shadow bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. That's what Pa always says. I have been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the sky, and Pa held up his hands. I stopped right where I was, and I waited. He looked up as if he were searching the stars, as if he were reading a map up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask. Then he called, "Ooh, ooh, ooh," the sound of a great horned owl. Ooh, ooh, ooh. I heard some metaphors there. He's saying that the pine trees are black and pointy against the sky. And then he says down here, the moon makes his face a silver mask. So his face is a silver mask. So that is the metaphor. Does that help you see it? Helps me see it. Again he called out, and then again. And after each call, he was silent. And for a moment, we both just listened. But there was no answer. Pa shrugged. I shrugged. I was not disappointed. My brothers all said that sometimes there's an owl, and sometimes there isn't. We walked on. I could feel the cold, as if someone's icy hand was palmed down on my back. Brr. And my nose and the tops of my cheeks felt cold and hot at the same time. But I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet and make your own heat. I just heard him say, it was so cold that it was like an icy hand on his back. We went into the woods. The shadows were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white snow. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, you have to be brave. I think I heard some more metaphors. He is saying the shadows were the blackest things he'd ever seen. And the way that the shadows stained the white snow. So the shadows were stained on the white snow. Is a metaphor. Metaphor. Okay, then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, and the snow below it was whiter than the milk in a cereal bowl. What a good metaphor! Snow was whiter than the milk in the cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his hand at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf over my mouth, and I listened hard. And then Pa called, "Ooh, ooh, ooh." I listened and looked so hard that my ears hurt, and my eyes got cloudy with the cold. Pa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the trees. Ooh, ooh, ooh. So the echo is a thread through the trees. Another metaphor. Pa smiled. Then he called back. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just as if he and the owl were talking about supper, or about the woods, or the moon, or the cold. I took my mitten off, the scarf off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. Excuse me. The owl's call came closer. From high up in the trees on the edge of the meadow, nothing in the meadow moved. All of a sudden, an owl shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken, and the shadows hooted again. There's the big owl. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the owl just as it was landing on a branch. Wow, how cool. For 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe even 100 minutes, we just stared at each other. Then the owl pumped its great wings and lifted off the branch like a shadow. Without a sound, it flew back into the forest. "Time to go home," Pa said to me. I knew then I could talk. I could even laugh out loud. But I was a shadow as we walked home. I heard a simile and a metaphor. He says that the owl lifted off the branches like a shadow. And then he says, I was a shadow. So simile, like or as, and a metaphor just says was or is. When you go, when you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Pa says. The kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining owl moon. Excuse me. Oh, I just love that book. Such beautiful language. I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you next time for another story.